From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
The trial of a former Billings group home worker accused of killing a disabled resident set to begin today here in Yellowstone County. We've got the latest to get you ready for that information. Plus, a Colorado woman who went missing in Missoula is now presumed to have drowned in the Clark Fork River. And a popular Montana landmark receiving new life. Mount Maurice up in the Beartooth Mountains burned during the Robinson Draw Fire of 2021. We're going to look at the reseeding efforts on Mount Maurice in just a few minutes. Good morning and welcome to Montana This Morning on this Monday, February 24th. I'm Augusta McDonnell here with Miller Robson.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Augusta.
Good morning. We missed you, Miller. We're happy to have you back.
It's good to be back. I missed everybody, but kudos to Red Lodge. Went down there skiing with the family over the weekend and just had a wonderful time. Just top-notch folks down there and can't wait to get back again soon.
Good stuff. And excuse me, I've got I am fighting with everything I've got from CVS. The little bit of cough. And,
do you?
Yes. So if there's a weird squeaking sound, hopefully I'm taking the,
so that's what that
the
was.
Emergency and the all the things. So let's see. We'll see how we hold out.
Well, just hang in there.
I'm putting up my best effort because I hate sounding nasally on air, probably more than you do.
Only an hour to go. Hang in there.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so let's take a step back in time. You know, it's been very mild out there the last several days. In fact, yesterday we hit a good 7 degrees above average. Our high of 48, flirting with 50, and we're going to do that the next couple of days, but we do have a chance of hitting 50, at least maybe by the middle of the week. Our high of 37, so a good 16 degrees above, or that's our low of 37, a good 16 degrees below average. Top gust yesterday near 40 miles an hour. That's going to be the big story over the next couple of days. It's been dry out there the last few days, but we're still pacing ahead for the month and for the year. In really good shape there. Snow totals for the month and for the season looking fantastic here in Billings. Mountain snow water equivalent. We do have a little bit of work left to do to our north and to our northwest, but for the most part, looking pretty good out there with all that snow that we've been having. So we wake up this morning here in Billings at 43, so above average this morning. Feels like 34. Winds out of the west at 23. There's a gust of 31. Again, that's going to be the big story. Do have a little bit of rain off to our, look around Sheridan, Hardin, maybe a few drops of rain. Miles City could see some snow down in the Bighorns. The mountains, western mountains could still see several inches of snow by tomorrow. Most of us, though, dry and milder than normal. I'll tell you more about that. And of course, we'll talk more about the winds coming up too.
All right, Miller, thanks for tracking all of that. Still lots going on in our weather, but these warmer temperatures do feel nice.
It feels great.
A little slushy, but does feel nice.
That's the bad. And the runoff and the flooding out there could be an issue too.
That may be the story this week.
Be careful. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Miller, thanks so much. And this morning, a looming deadline for millions of federal workers after a weekend email from Elon Musk telling them to explain their accomplishments over the last week. This comes as just last night, the White House announced it's firing 2,000 USAID employees and putting thousands more on administrative leave. CBS's Jared Hill has the latest on the shakeup.
Today, the clock may be ticking for some federal employees. After a weekend post on X from Elon Musk, a mass email went out to millions of federal workers, instructing them to reply with 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week. The deadline, midnight tonight.
The chainsaw for bureaucracy.
Musk writing a failure to respond will be taken as a resignation, but not every agency is cooperating with Musk's new demand. Freshly sworn-in FBI Director Kash Patel, in a statement obtained by CBS News, said the Bureau will conduct reviews, adding, when and if further information is required, we will coordinate the responses. The Departments of State, Homeland Security, and Defense have all told their employees not to comply. The escalation came hours after President Trump posted on Truth Social he'd like to see Elon get more aggressive in his efforts to shrink the federal workforce.
The fraudsters, liars, cheaters, globalists, and deep state bureaucrats are being sent packing.
Republican Senator John Curtis on Face the Nation called for compassion.
I regret that narrative. We all know, thousands, millions of federal workers who are good people, who work hard. But the reality of it is we have 3 million federal workers.
Today, President Trump turns his focus to foreign relations, inviting France's president to the White House. Russia's war in Ukraine is expected to be a top issue, with Ukraine's president saying over the weekend he'd step down for peace and a place in the NATO alliance. Jared Hill, CBS News.
And over the weekend, President Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 4-star General C.Q. Brown. He's expected to name retired Air Force Lieutenant General David Kane as his replacement. Kane would be the first 3-star general in that role. Trump also fired the chief of the Navy. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth once suggested she was only promoted because she's a woman. And our headlines here out of Billings. The trial of a former Billings group home worker accused of killing a disabled resident is set to begin today in Yellowstone County. Dante Garrio faces a charge of deliberate homicide after allegedly beating to death a resident in February of last year. According to charging documents, Garrio told officers he was walking the resident, who was nonverbal and weighed 108 pounds, to his room when the resident kept on falling. Garrio then admitted to kicking him on his side while also punching the victim in his body and face. A staff member also said they saw him stomp on the resident 3 times. The victim was taken to the hospital on the evening of February 4th and later died from his injuries. Now, more than a year later, the trial is set to begin this week with jury selection scheduled to take place today. And up by Red Lodge, a popular Montana landmark is receiving new life. Mount Maurice, situated in the Beartooth Mountains, burned during the Robertson Draw Fire of 2021. Flames at that time scorched 30,000 total acres in June. But now, nearly 4 years later, and from thousands of feet in the air, one aircraft is sprucing up Mount Maurice for the summer. Last week, a crew from Sterling, Colorado was contracted by the Bureau of Land Management to reseed the mountain, which 1/3 of the total land burned belongs to.
We live in a beautiful place and we would like it to look natural and native, and so this is a big step toward returning it.
Now, nearly 4 years later, life is being returned. Efforts began last year with Special K Ranch in Columbus growing sagebrush seeds. And this morning, there may be some relief for national parks who were facing staffing cuts under a government downsizing effort. MTN's John Shearer has the latest on this most recent development.
Here at the famous Roosevelt Arch, leading into Yellowstone National Park, visitors arriving for this spring and summer may be getting something of a break. That's because the Interior Department is backtracking and allowing the National Park Service to hire many more seasonal employees than they hired even a year ago. It'll be about 7,700 now, well above the original 5,000 announced just a week ago.
Well, that's very encouraging. I mean, we were taken aback the fact that at the prospect that perhaps there was going to be very limited seasonal staff in Yellowstone this summer, and that's alarming to say the least.
Montana U.S. Representative Ryan Zinke spoke to The Hill about national park staffing, saying of the layoffs, quote, "I like what DOJ is doing. Let's shake it up, because business as usual is not working in the great outdoors," end quote. In spite of the additional seasonal workers, 1,000 permanent Park Service employees remain laid off. Sexton worries that could hurt the parks and subsequently his business.
When we start talking about economics, then those powers that be, they tend to, jobs, money. Unfortunately, that's where we have to go. And for me personally, it's more about the resource, but obviously I'm invested. If our business doesn't do well, that affects us economically, it affects my staff.
Also affected are park workers like Richard Midget, who were laid off.
And so I had to go on that Friday, on Valentine's Day, with that expectation I'd be fired, and I'd lose my health insurance, I'd lose my income.
Midget says he may be able to get back a former job with park concessionaire Xanterra. There are some people who would say, well, you're bouncing back, you're going to probably get a job in the private sector now. That's just what this is all about. What would you say to them?
I'd say that it's missing the point, because a lot of people that hold these jobs aren't doing it to have money, and you can make more money in the private sector, especially in technology. Are you kidding me?
Montana's senior U.S. Senator, Steve Daines, says in a statement that he's watching park staffing closely. Daines says, quote, "As chairman of the Senate Subcommittee on National Parks, I have seen firsthand the issues facing our public lands, and I'm always looking for ways to address these issues. I'll continue to work with USDA and the DOI to make sure we have personnel in place to protect our lands and our outdoor way of life. Midget says the uncertain atmosphere among park workers is hurting morale.
Not a happy place to be for a lot of people right now, and it's supposed to be that kind of dream job, dream location that doesn't pay well, but you're doing a great service to the American people.
For MTN News, I'm John Shearer in Yellowstone National Park.
John, thanks so much. One Kalispell tree farm is not quite what you'd expect. Tibetan yaks help keep the forest acres healthy and prepped for wildfire. The Montana Ag Network's Emily Brown takes us to the Springbrook Ranch.
Montana has more than 600 tree farms, covering over 237,000 acres of land. These tree farmers do more than you might expect.
They are good forest stewards. They care about the land that they sit on.
To be certified by the American Tree Farm System, the tree farmer must own 10 or more woodland acres and have a management plan to keep their forests healthy and growing quality trees.
A managed forest is often called a tree farm, but it doesn't mean it's in little straight rows of trees.
And every year, each state selects an outstanding tree farmer of the year. In 2023, Montana's winners were Jim Watson and his partner Carol.
Once somebody's won the local state Tree Farmer of the Year award, if they get elevated up to the Western Regional Tree Farmer, which Jim ended up winning.
Watson isn't your typical farmer.
I'm a tree hugger that carries a chainsaw.
His nearly 1,700 acres are home to a diverse population of trees.
And our focus is on forest restoration and wildlife habitat and having a good, healthy, resilient forest.
Trees at Springbrook are thinned and spaced to keep diversity.
We did a lot of understory work, cleaning out understory and small trees that weren't thriving. We wanted to remove the worst and leave the best.
Watson does all this work.
She just loves attention.
With the help of a herd of Tibetan yaks.
We're still grazing yaks, but that helps reduce the grass fuel load. It helps with wildfire, but it also helps with general forest management.
And limiting fuels reduces a bigger threat.
So we're guarding against wildfire, so we don't want the trees crowded too close together, because then if a big fire comes through, they can run through the crowns.
Watson's property has the seal of approval from fire management organizations like the U.S. Forest Service and DNRC.
He has islands of fuels where trees are kind of pocketed together, but again, there's that large space in between where that fire intensity is able to drop down, and that flame length then will also and be a more approachable and safer to access fire.
Yeah, that's like a great situation to walk into, or it's a great hand to be dealt as a firefighter.
For Watson, being a tree farmer and using the program's resources have set the course for the rest of his days.
There's more to do every day than possibly can be done, so I just pick and choose what I enjoy.
In Kalispell, Emily Brown, MTN News.
Emily, thanks so much. In climate news this morning, newly installed U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright called pledges to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 a sinister goal at a conference held in London last week. Wright went on to say that his #1 goal as Energy Secretary is for the government to get out of the way of fossil fuels. Wright is a member of President Trump's new Council on Energy Dominance, which has been tasked with driving up the already record-setting domestic oil and gas production. Environmental groups have filed 2 lawsuits against the Trump administration, marking the opening moves in the legal battle over the president's climate agenda that's expected to last throughout his second term. The lawsuits filed by groups such as the Natural Resources Defense Council and the Sierra Club, among others, are contesting President Trump's decisions to remove Biden-era protections from offshore drilling for millions of acres of federal waters. And the EPA says it's already cleared or deferred 75% of the properties impacted by the Los Angeles wildfires as part of Phase 1 of wildfire cleanup. There's still a long and controversial road ahead. Residents and officials are protesting over how long potentially hazardous debris will remain on site, where it will be moved to, and an announcement by FEMA that it won't be testing soil for toxic contaminants.